Welcome to Access Your Leadership, where we share inspiring career stories and talk about ways you can level up your own leadership potential. I'm your host and coach, Hakim, and today I'm here with my good friend, Jeff Bast. Jeff is one of the founders of Bast Amron with his partner, Brett Amron, and they were kind enough to have me on their podcast a while back. Jeff calls himself the bankruptcy Buddha because pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Jeff, so good to have you here.
Thanks, Hakim. Pleasure to be on your show. I was happy to have you on our show. Our show is called The Practice, which is available on Spotify and iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts. But loved your episode. Thought it was fantastic and a lot of fun to record.
It was a blast. And you have an awesome studio in your firm, too. It was great to sit there and actually feel like we were in the studio recording that with Brett.
Thanks. Yeah, we love that.
So starting out every episode, as I like to do, what's a leadership win that comes to mind for you, whether it's self-leadership or leading of others that you might be willing to share?
That's a tough one. We were about to celebrate our 15 years as a law firm. We're up to 25 employees. So there's so many sort of leadership tests that I face as a firm leader. And I guess the one that comes to mind would be the story of one of our paralegals, Maria, who started out in our office as a file clerk, literally sitting at a counter in our file area. It wasn't even a room. She was sitting on in a stool at a counter, helping us, organize our files. And we saw in Maria certain skills and capabilities that maybe I'm not sure she even saw. And we encouraged her to grow and bloom, as we do with all of our employees. And she eventually rose through the ranks to become a paralegal. And now she's one of, if not our top paralegal, certainly one of the top paralegals in our office, who is regularly relied upon as a resource by both clients and attorneys and other paralegals and staff in the office, and just a real model of, the type of employee that everybody wants. Just a great worker, a good person, diligent, and capable of growth. And I think the true test of a leader is facilitating growth in your people, bringing your people to levels that maybe they themselves didn't even know they could reach. And Maria is a great example of that.
That's a great one. I love the idea of, and the fact that you understand that the main responsibility, as I see it too, of leaders is really to develop people. And what a retention tool. I mean, the story could have easily been that Maria was up and out, but
yeah,
someone being seen by their employer, by their colleagues for having that talent that you mentioned, maybe they didn't even see in themselves at the time, and being developed and supported to grow. What better place to stay and to continue growing if you feel like people see you and value you that way? It's great.
I think that's a key component of our success as a law firm, is that with staff and lawyers, that we make a very clear path to leadership at every level. And there's really not much of a ceiling for really anyone. I mean, obviously, if you're not a lawyer, you can't become a lawyer unless you go to law school, but any of our staff people can grow to the next level, and we will allow them to do as much as they're capable of doing, and oftentimes push them beyond what they think they're capable of. And the same thing is true with the lawyers. We're very vocal that every lawyer in our firm, our hope is that they all rise to the rank of partner, and eventually we'll displace Brett and myself as the leaders of this firm, because at some point we'll be gone. And our intention is to clear a path for others to lead this place.
It's so refreshing not to be threatened by that too. I think it's so easy to want to keep people in their boxes and just have people doing what you've hired them to do, and that be sufficient. But when you talk about the clear path, I'm wondering, is that talked about like comfortably, widely, regularly?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
In what ways?
Maybe clear is not the right word. It's a path, and Brett, we're actually developing it as we go. When you start a firm, you're kind of building the airplane while you're in the air, but we have created a path. We're very vocal about it. At this time, we have 6 total partners, including Brett and myself. So we've raised, 4 people up into the partnership rank. 2 came over laterally as partners, but 2 others rose from the associate level to partner, and others are on the track. And we're very vocal about the intention to bring those people into the leadership of the firm. I tell people I'm 55 years old. My intention is to retire by 65. And now retirement doesn't necessarily mean I'm just gone and there's a puff of smoke and I'm gone out the door. The whistle blows and I slide down my dinosaur and I jump in my car. But I expect that others are going to be stepping into the leadership roles and will be slowly taking over so that when Brett and I are gone, this firm survives and continues to employ and fulfill people. And we don't take lightly our responsibility to provide the source of income for, 25 families.
And for those listening, the sliding down a dinosaur's tail was a Flintstones reference. So
If you didn't know that,
yeah.
then you're young, I guess.
Yeah. But I love the fact that when people talk about culture, they start thinking about all of the emotional well-being, sometimes the mental well-being of people when they think about culture. But development of people is a real big part of culture. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked in terms of seeing people around you advance as a way to motivate you and inspire you and see that there are possibilities rather than just seeing everybody stagnant in their roles and thinking, okay, well, if I want more opportunities for development or advancement, I'm gonna have to look elsewhere. So I love that you guys are committed to creating that as just kind of commonplace and part of the culture so that people know that if they have that desire, they'll be supported and that they can stick around for a little while too.
Yeah. Yeah. We tell people regularly, and we have monthly one-on-ones where partners, it used to be just Brett and myself, but with each of the partners, we rotated around, now has a one-on-one with all the staff and the attorneys in our office. And it's an opportunity to share feedback and to voice concerns or discuss really any topic so that we're not waiting until the end of the year for the single
Mhm.
evaluation of the year. We're in a constant feedback loop. But in my experience, people want a lot of things from a job. Obviously, they want a paycheck, but they want to work in a place where they feel valued. They want to work with people that they like, that they enjoy working with. They want to feel important and that there's opportunities for growth. And I'm sure there's more, but we try diligently to provide those opportunities to our people. And I think, you've been in our office. We invested a lot of energy into building out an office that is a collaborative workspace where people want to come, where people want to work, where they want to eat together. This to me, this is my other family. And I think most of the employees here look at it that way. We work hard, we work in teams together, but we enjoy working with each other because we like each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah. I mean, and talk about setting the tone from the top. And I love that you mentioned family. I immediately went to anytime I've joined a team, whether I was leading that team or I was becoming a new member of that team, I always had a conversation at our first big team meeting about family. And I said, look, I'm spending more time here, 8, 9, 10+ hours a day with all of you, more than my own family. The very least, we can create an environment that's supportive and enjoyable and enriching and
Right.
challenging in all the right ways. So you're co-founding this firm now with Brett. Can you talk a little bit about where you started and how you got to where you are now?
Sure, sure. Happy to. I went to law school in New York, and out of law school, I decided I wanted to clerk, and I targeted bankruptcy judges and district court judges in 5 cities that I'd never been to, but that I heard good things about. And I thought, okay, this is a great way to go spend time. And I ended up getting a clerkship in Dallas, Texas for a bankruptcy judge, loved it. And after that, I clerked for a district court judge here in South Florida who was handling bankruptcy appeals. And from there, I went into big law. I went to work at Holland and Knight as an associate, climbed the ranks there to partner. I put my head down. I worked my butt off and climbed the ranks to partner, and then eventually to equity partner. And then a group of partners from that firm opened the Miami office of Hunton and Williams, and they were recruiting my team. They kept saying, "You guys got to come over. You guys got to come over." Finally, we did. We joined that firm and another international law firm where, that was the first time I ever came across laterally somewhere where I had to sort of prove myself. And that took a little time, but I think I did a good job. I became the hiring partner for the office. I had a corner office. I had a great parking spot. I was really very well compensated. I was happy, but as I was started to focus on growing my book of business more. I was encountering the challenges of developing a book at a big firm, and I was getting ready to turn 40, and I was thinking a lot about what do I want to do with life. I'm sure you get to those ages and you start focusing more on purpose and the why. And I decided I kind of came home one day and I said, honey, I think I'm going to start my own firm. She's like, what? And it was literally kind of like that. And a couple weeks later, I left and I announced I was leaving and started my own firm. It was literally it was that quick. I formed my own firm in March of 2008. I remember I sent out an announcement email and I hit send on the email and my inbox literally went zip, filled up. Like I had like 100 emails almost immediately, including my very first client. Um, and I started my own firm, and that was great. And it was the first time that I ever, even though I was an equity partner at two different law firms, the first time that I ever felt like an owner,
Mm.
that I was the boss. When I first, would spend a day working, at the end of the day, I go, I billed 5 hours. I just made X dollars. It was the first time I ever really, it never even occurred to me that I wasn't an owner before. And even though I was even the hiring partner, I really wasn't hiring and firing people on my own. I was, reporting to another committee and not making decisions on my own. But Brett was doing the same thing. He had started his firm in a couple months earlier before I did. We didn't really know each other well, but as two solo practitioners in a similar area, we started, having lunch together and bouncing ideas off each other and using each other as as Brett likes to say, the partner down the hall. And then we eventually started sharing space together, and then we formed a firm, and that was May 1st of 2009. We're about to celebrate our 15th anniversary, and we have 25 people, and we're in a new space, and life is good. It's been quite a journey, a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
I feel like there's probably so much in there that we could unpack because there's just, I can imagine how, I mean, even when you mentioned 2008, I'm thinking about the
Oh
state
yeah.
state of the economy.
Yeah, my
And
timing could not have been better. People have said, did you know what was happening? I mean, I certainly knew something was happening. I didn't know that was happening.
yeah,
We were getting very busy, starting at the end of 2007. And, was swamped from the get-go. I started a firm, and, I wasn't starting with any clients. A couple of clients decided to join me, but it was very important to me to leave my firm. I always say there's two ways to leave a big law firm. One is there's an email that says Jeff Bass is no longer with the firm, and the other is Jeff Bass is leaving the firm. We're having a celebration at 2 o'clock in the conference room.
yeah,
And so I wanted to leave with the party, and it was very important to me to leave that way. I had great relationships at both the firms that I worked at, and I wanted to preserve those. But when I started the firm, I was busy almost immediately. And I hired someone almost immediately too. And that's something I always advise lawyers who are starting, or any professional who's starting their own business, to. I think there's a tendency to wait until I'm ready, until I have enough business, until, you're always like waiting for something. Just hire someone now, immediately, and you will see the value of that person immediately, because it will free you up to do the high value tasks that you need to be doing. You should not be licking envelopes, for
yeah,
example.
yeah.
So,
And
uh,
that's one of the best things I did as I started even on my own. And I had that hesitation of, well, I'm not there yet. Let me get to a place where I'm there, and I'm there now. But early on, had I not done that, it would not have freed me up to build my practice the way that I was able to, because someone else was helping support me to do some of the more administrative tasks. And quite frankly, and I shared this with the person as I hired them, these were things that I wasn't deeply passionate about either. The things that I wanted to do, they were skilled and talented at doing, and they had great experience in doing, and they enjoyed doing. I didn't as much. So there's sometimes this martyr syndrome in leadership and certainly ownership, where you feel like you've got to take it all, on, and it's this woe is me. It all falls to me. I've got to do everything. But the reality is, you actually don't have to. You can be strategic about how you solicit help.
yeah.
So
And I mean, even that point, soliciting help, there is a fear among many in asking for help. And I always try to encourage my kids this, but also my team, that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. And generally people want to help. As a general rule, if somebody comes to me to ask for help, I want to help them. I mean, if I can. And generally, when you ask someone for help, as a general rule, they want to help. And if they're not able to help, I think at the worst, they're flattered that you thought they could help you. So I think asking for help is critical.
Yeah, I agree. And I think those who struggle with asking for help, there's a lot of judgments, there's a lot of inner critic coming up in those situations where they're struggling with this idea of, if I ask for help, what does that say about me? And and then you get to this, when you're a leader, being the smartest person in the room and needing to be the one always talking, versus actually realizing that this is a group of people around you who are here to support you, want to support you, want to add value. And when they do, then you can be off doing the things that need to get done.
Yeah, agreed. And by the way, the comment about being the smartest person in the room, I always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're getting bad advice. So
Yeah.
I don't never want to be the smartest person in
Yeah.
the room. That's why I hire all these great lawyers and staff that are smarter than me and better at me than I am at most things. So maybe
Yeah.
I am the smartest guy because I hired people smarter than
There you go. Yeah, right.
me.
But I think, yeah, and it creates that. You remember me talking about this at a different event, this sort of artificial harmony. Because if you're just getting people who nod every time that you say something, and never push back and never offer up their own ideas or thoughts or opinions, then that expression of, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room,
Yeah.
then that's exactly true, because you're getting that wrong advice. So going back to when you made the decision, and it sounded like you were so deliberate and intentional about making that decision, what allowed you to have the confidence and the optimism that things would work out? Or was it just kind of a leap of faith?
It's funny that you asked that because I've reflected on that question, multiple times over the years, and I've had this conversation with many people because I don't know if it was ignorance or confidence or just like the nature of entrepreneurship that I didn't really see failure as an option. It's just what it didn't even enter the calculus for me. And I remember when I was talking to people, overwhelming the majority said, God, that takes guts. I can't believe that you have the guts to do that. I wish I could do that. I had so many lawyers say to me, I wish I could do that. And I kept thinking, what's stopping you? I don't understand what's stopping you. And I don't see the fear. To me, I just didn't, it didn't even occur to me that I could fail. I was never like, whoa, what if this goes wrong or what if that goes wrong? And I think which is kind of odd for me because I'm trained to do that as an insolvency attorney. My business is failure. And so anytime someone comes to me with an idea, I immediately start going, well, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong. But when I had the idea of starting my firm, it never even crossed my mind how, what all the problems I could have faced. And I think that's, entrepreneurship. Like I think entrepreneurs just don't see failure as an option. They're just going to
Yeah.
go forward and go forward. And that's part of the success. But I wasn't aware of that until later when I reflected back on it.
Mm. Were you always like that, Jeff? I mean, was failure not present for you all throughout your growth as a young
I've always,
adult and professional?
I guess I've always been sort of diligent and focused. When I set my mind to something, I'm just going to do it. And yeah, I guess so. I don't take failure lightly. I have always tried to learn from failure when I've fallen down or, failed in something. I have tried to turn it into a lesson for myself. But yeah, I think perseverance is one of my, skill sets that, maybe I haven't even, I'm not sure I've even talked about this before in this conversation right now with you. I think as I reflect on things, different stages of my life, yeah, I guess I did just sort of adopt that. All right, let's just do this. And it was do the work and get through it.
Mm.
And that's how I've succeeded in
Yeah.
life.
And I like what that builds in you too, because I think anyone who's listening hears perseverance, and perseverance could be seen in some contexts as this like stubbornness, almost to like
Right. Yeah.
continue to push forward. But actually the perseverance, having seen that prove to create positive results, started to build a real confidence in you that you could burn the boats and there's no plan B. This is what I'm doing, and I'm going to see it through till it's successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I think, my approach to most things is you can do it. I can do it. I'm not, I'm not going to quit.
Yeah.
I think if you asked my wife and my kids and most people around me that know me well, friends, they would say that, yeah, Jeff's not going to quit.
Yeah.
I'm just not a quitter, but
Well, I like that
yeah,
response too, because I mean, having gotten to know you over the time we've known each other, you're a very thoughtful person. You're a very mindful person. And also, like you mentioned, given the work that you do, it could have been very easy to catch yourself reflecting and, well, let's get my ducks in a row before we decide to do this. And let's make sure that I've examined all the possibilities and what ifs and, coulds and shoulds. And there is something really powerful about being committed to taking some certain action and then deciding just to go for it. Because I think when we leave space for all of the what ifs, we can find evidence for those everywhere. I mean,
yeah, sure. The things that could go wrong are always going to outnumber the things that could go right, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's a great, great way to think about it. And I wonder if it's, the shoemaker's kids are barefoot. I wonder, because I'm a bankruptcy and insolvency attorney, that I'm always analyzing the risks, that for my own thing, I just didn't do that at all. For my own plan, I didn't analyze the risks at all, because that's all I do is analyze risks. And I hadn't really thought of that before, but yeah, I know that when I set out my plan was kind of like, well, if I took my hourly rate, I was at a high rate at the big firm,
Mhm.
and I reduced it by, I think, $150. I reduced it by like almost half, or a third or something. And if I collect 1,000 hours, I can make enough money to live on. And I had been billing 2,000 hours a year, and so I thought, if I can do half of that, lower rate at half the hours, I'll be fine. That was the analysis I did,
Yeah.
and like I said, maybe it was ignorance or overconfidence or some combination of the two, but it worked out. So, and I do, I always say, and I was asked this the other day, like my favorite saying is, things work out in the end. And if they're not working out, it's not the end. And I really do believe that. I think things work out. If you just stay the course with whatever it is you're doing, things will work out.
I agree. So as you think back to those first 5 hours that you build and actually felt like you owned that,
Yeah.
what did you reflect back on that really made you excited about going out on your own? I mean, what was the motivation to own your own business, own your own time, own your own success?
I felt like, this may sound a little corny, but like I felt like I could build a better mousetrap. Not that I was
Mm,
gonna look, these law firms are very successful. They've been around for generations. I felt like I could do it my way,
mm,
and I could build something that was a reflection of me and not somebody else, or not some people who passed away a year, generations ago, in some other city or state. And I felt like I could, I want to build something that's mine, that I feel a sense of ownership about that, and pride, and I could build something and do it my way and not have to do it everybody else's way. In fact, at one point in my career, I was having doubts. It was when I first made partner, and at Holland and Knight, kudos to them, they used to send all new partners to this sort of leadership retreat. And they did all kinds of stuff, but like 360-degree evaluations by your peers and your subordinates and your senior your supervisors, and then you met with a therapist, and it was all kinds of coaching and everything. And I remember sitting with the psychologist at the end of the thing saying, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. And they asked me about, well, why not? And I said, some of the folks I work with, are in my industry, they want to fight over everything, and some things it doesn't make sense to fight over that. And she asked me, well, you don't do it that way, do you? And I said, no. And she's like, and are you successful? And I said, yeah. And she's like, and do your clients like that? And I said, yeah. And she's like, well, maybe you can just do it and not do it that way. And I said, it was like somebody turned a light bulb on for me, that I was like, oh, wow, I guess I can do this and not have to do it the way everyone else I've, seen do it. And I think this was a progression from that. I can take this and build it my own way.
yeah, I think if I could sound bites one section of this right off the bat would be that, because that's not even solely applicable to starting your own business or doing your own thing in terms of what your career is, but actually just sort of authenticity more broadly. Like what when I talk about leaders struggling with some of their leadership roles or on their journey, it's this idea of, who am I going to be today? this idea that they have to wake up every day and figure out what kind of leader I'm going to be today. Well, yesterday I was this really tough talking leader. Today I'm going to be, the really soft spoken, compassionate leader. Maybe that'll work better today. And it's just like how exhausting that must be to figure out how to conform or to constantly adapt to a style that you think is going to work versus just settling into what your style is,
Yeah,
who
be
you are.
yourself. Right.
Yeah, and what works for you, and then just commit to that and let that play out and be successful doing that. That feels a lot lighter, a lot simpler, a lot more honest too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, that reveals, you said it, authenticity. And I think people see authenticity, or more likely they see inauthenticity. When someone is, acting in a way that's not true to who they are, I think people see that. People who know you, obviously, a stranger on the street's not going to know, but people that you work with every day. And yeah, I think be yourself. Like, that saying, be yourself, everyone else is taken. I like to read a lot and learn a lot. I listen to podcasts. I love yours. You could take away nuggets, but you have to conform these ideas to your own personality, style,
Yeah,
self. But I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
that's great insight, what you just said. This idea of serving as a leader in some different capacity, or wearing a different hat each day. It's
Yeah.
not. It can't be easy, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how effective it can be either long term. I think short term you can get away with that, but I don't know how long can you do that.
That's right. No, it's definitely not sustainable. And that's where I think I end up finding myself in some of these conversations is people have hit a wall and they're just thinking, I don't know how much longer I wanted to lead this way. And when we actually get down to it, we realize you're not leading in any way that's aligned with your values or even that your values or who you are or what would actually make you happy and satisfied in your job. And I
Right.
think as you think about then going into the firm, connecting with Brett and having all of these ideas around why you wanted to move into this, how did you find that alignment? What were those conversations like with Brett where you realized you both were aligned and you shared a leadership philosophy and what you wanted to build together?
So, as I mentioned, I like to consider myself a bankruptcy lawyer who does litigation, and I think Brett's a litigator who does bankruptcy. And so we have very much complementary skill sets. And as we got to know each other better, we were not, childhood friends or anything like that. We met when Brett announced his firm, the opening of his firm in January of '08. I sent him a congratulations and said, hey, we should get lunch. And so we had lunch. I didn't really know him at that point. I think that's probably the first time we ever met in person. But as we were practicing at the same time, you get to know someone. One, I got to know his work ethic
Yeah.
and his moral compass. As you're watching someone struggling through the same, we're going through parallel struggles at the same time. He had his own office, I had my own office, I had one person, he had one person. We had so many parallels, and I realized we shared the same moral compass. We had very much complementary strengths and styles and personalities, even. And I liked him, and I felt like, and I think probably the most important consideration in a partnership, I felt like I could trust him. And I think trust is, I say this all the time, that, trust is the most absolute, most important feature of any relationship, marital, business, friendship, anything. If you don't trust that person, you got nothing,
So true.
and we started sharing space together first. I was sharing space with other lawyers, and he needed an office, so he moved in there. And so it's kind of like you start dating before you get married.
Yeah.
And we worked a couple of cases together, and then it was a slow progression. But I remember we made the announcement of our firm at the weekend of a bankruptcy local bar retreat, and everyone's reaction was, "Oh, we knew that was going to happen." Everybody, apparently, Brett and I were the last ones to figure it out, but we were the classic way that a lawyer makes a referral is, they give a client three names. Back in those days in 2008, if you were at a big firm and a client needed a small thing, you would say, all right, call Jeff Bass, Brett Amron, or somebody else. So we were two of the three people on a list, and we literally were pitching the same clients in the same conference room because we were sharing space. And it just made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It made a lot of sense.
So how in the early years then, as you started to grow your now joint venture, what did you see as the most important thing for, I mean, trust, I could not agree more. That's paramount. And then, and as you mentioned, in any relationship. But as you started to think about the direction of your firm and starting to acquire staff and new lawyers? How were those conversations between the two of you? How did the shared vision get created? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was sort of created organically and
Mm,
kind of as we went. I don't think when we started off we said, "Oh, we want to be 25 lawyers," and we've never really said that. We didn't have a target of being a certain size or a certain. We have over the years set certain revenue targets or size targets, but I kind of have never subscribed to that, and I've struggled with that because, and I think we both have, because you're just picking a number. There's no meaning to that. Now, if you hit the number, great, that's wonderful. If you don't, that's also great. It doesn't really
right.
matter. And so I've always struggled with how to set a meaningful goal. So we never really had a goal like that. We just started, working. And it was like I said this before, build the airplane as you're flying. It was like we're busy, and we really kind of grew the firm out of necessity because we hit the ceiling of capacity. Like we couldn't take on anymore. And it was like, we need to hire some more people because we never really faced the problem of having to turn down a client because we didn't have the power to do it. So we grew it organically. We never really sat down to say, let's make it look like this. And I think that's part of our success. Is what happened is we built something that looked like the two of us. And I think that a firm's culture, much like a person's personality, is a reflection of the personalities of the
Mm,
people that work there. And I think our culture is a reflection of not just Brett and myself, but everybody here.
yeah.
And that's why I think people come here and they want to work here, and they don't really leave here. We have
Yeah.
almost no turnover.
Yeah.
So
Well, I can say for sure. I mean, having gone to the office, not even as a client, but just as a friend and a podcast guest, you could feel there was a really positive, comfortable energy in your space. I mean, I think it's well appointed so that it's conducive to that, but also I think it has a lot to do with the way that you and Brett relate to one another. That's why I'm so interested in your early
yeah,
relationship because I've seen how it's evolved, and to be sitting there with the two of you, you would have thought you've known each other all your lives because of the way that you connect, the way that you relate, the way that you communicate. So now,
yeah,
as you think about the firm having grown, I want to go back to a point you made earlier, and then I'm mindful of time. We'll wrap up. But going back to those one-on-ones that you mentioned, I think there's a lot of questions that sometimes leaders have around that usage of their time. I don't have time to meet with everybody. I don't have time to talk to people like that. I mean, what I got things I got to do. And maybe they're open for one-on-ones as in like tactical one-on-ones. So where's this project? Where are we on our KPIs or OKRs? But in terms of the one-on-ones you were talking about, it doesn't sound like that's what those meetings are for. Can you talk a little bit more about how those
yeah.
emerged?
Yeah. So, yeah, those are all good points about them. We originally started doing it because a problem arose in our firm that we weren't aware of. Like,
Mm,
and oftentimes the leader is the last person to find out what everyone's talking about because, they want to keep it from us, or we're in the office with the doors closed. And we didn't want to allow that to happen again. So we said we wanted to keep our finger on the pulse. So we started doing periodic meetings, one-on-ones, and it's a lot. For every time I do it, it's a full day or 2 days, and so what we started doing is, as we raise the other partners, we rotate it.
mhm,
So now each month a different partner meets with people. And I'm not truthfully, I think the other partners may not meet with the staff. It may be just Brett and I meet with the staff. I don't. It's evolved and it keeps changing, but I think it's a touch point. People want to know that they have an outlet. First of all, they like to have a conversation with the firm founders, and they really enjoy, because I always ask, is this valuable to you? And almost always they say, yeah, they want it. And to me, it's an opportunity for capture. 99% of the time, it may be a waste of time,
mm,
according to the
mm,
response that you're saying you're hearing from leaders. But when you find a problem, or you hear about, or you identify an issue, and it doesn't even have to be a problem, it could be an opportunity that you
mhm.
learn about because you did that, it's so worth it.
So
You
worth it.
know, I still think there's value in it. And I know there's value, my people find value in it. But it is hard to justify it every month. We do it now monthly, but I said we're rotating it through 6 people, and you're already doing it once a year at the end of the year,
Mm,
presumably. Although I keep hearing about firms that really just don't have a formal feedback process, and I think that's a tragic mistake. I think that's one of the failings of a lot of businesses is a failure of feedback. Even on day-to-day assignments, people don't get feedback. I always try to, if I'm revising a document, I always redline it and send it back so the person can at least learn from. Otherwise, if
That's
I
right.
just make the changes and file it, that person never knows how I changed it. So we're intentional about feedback and we're intentional about communication. We're really big on communication. And communication is one of our core values. It's on our website, it used to be on a wall in our office. Um, so yeah, is it a waste of time? It's not the most efficient use of time, but people, our employees are people
Yeah.
and they want to talk to other people and they
Yeah.
especially want to talk to the boss,
Yeah.
and this is an opportunity. And we, by the way, we also try not to talk about the specific case or project or whatever
Right.
during those meetings because that's not the time. And it could be 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a
Right.
long meeting. It's a touch point. It's an opportunity where if you have something that's bothering you, you're going to come and sit in my office. That's a great time to bring it up. Or if I have something that I want to bring up.
Yeah.
So it's not
Well,
just a complaint session. I want to
no. Yeah, I think
it's
that's
an
clear. And I
opportunity to talk. And sometimes it's about, hey, I want to do this other, I want, we talked about growth before. Hey, I think I can take on this other task, or I want more of X or Y or Z.
right.
And so oftentimes that's the nature of the conversation.
Yeah.
Or I'm overwhelmed right now. I want to know that if somebody's overwhelmed and someone else is not, if we didn't have that, it might take us weeks to figure that out.
Yeah, I think there's so much value in that. And again, we're using the word waste, but obviously that's a perspective.
Right.
And if it's relative to business, billing hours, but you made the point, which I think is spot on, which is you can spend a dozen meetings just having chit chat and comfortable casual catch up. And then out of one of those comes a valuable opportunity or a crucial issue that needs to be addressed. And every meeting you've had since then has been worth it because you've uncovered
Right.
that. I think that's
Yeah.
exactly right. And the other piece that you touched on, which we could spend many, many more minutes on, feedback and how that relates to development. Because I think a lot
Yeah.
of people put feedback under the difficult conversations category. And they think, well, I don't like having difficult conversations. I don't like giving feedback. If you look at feedback as a development tool, then all of a sudden you get to do what your job is as a leader, which is to develop your people. And without that feedback, how are they growing? How are they learning? I think
Yeah.
that's a great point you made too.
And people want it. People want feedback. Everyone
Absolutely.
wants to know, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know, how am I doing? I mean, yeah, you get a paycheck each month, and I guess that tells you, but it's not variable. It's not like,
Yeah.
hey, you made more this month because you're that much better this month, or
Yeah.
this, you made less this month because you didn't show up. But
I can think of several instances in my own career where I was making extremely good money and coasting and was just crawling out of my skin, Jeff. Like it just felt so unproductive. It felt like I was languishing. And yay, my paycheck showed up every couple of weeks, but I wanted so much more. I was like, I'll give half this back if I could get a development opportunity, if I could just be seen and put in a position to grow and to lead. And that was a eye-opening moment for me because you realize that yes, people are here for a paycheck. We know that, but also that whole being seen, heard, valued piece is so important for people, especially this new generation that's coming up. They're extremely vocal about wanting to be seen and heard and valued. So creating opportunities in that way is, I think, one-on-ones are a great way to do that. Thanks for sharing that. So
of
I'm
course,
mindful of time. I want to ask you one last question. So we've been talking about leadership and so many gold nuggets coming out of this conversation and also again so many different directions that we could have continued to go, but as you think about people who are listening, what's a leadership skill or characteristic or attribute that you think is really important as people develop themselves as leaders?
I'm a believer in leading by example. I think, we as leaders, perhaps the most important thing we do is model the behavior that we want our people to adopt. I'm not looking to make a bunch of little Jeff and Brett clones, but when I want people to do something, I do it. This is the silliest example, but if there's a mess on the floor, I'm going to clean it up. If there's a dish on the sink, I'm going to put it in the dishwasher. If a client needs coffee, I'll get them the coffee. And I'm not saying I want everyone to make coffee or clean messes. I'm just saying that if you want people to act a certain way, then act that way. Don't demand from your people something that you're not willing to do. And I think we lose sight of that. It's the same thing as parents.
Yeah.
I see parents who, I talk to parents. I remember back in the days before our kids were, driving age. Mine are all in college and beyond. But, they're on their phones while they drive. Your kids are watching you. You are teaching them to be on your phone while you're driving. So if you need to put that phone in the glove box or somewhere else. So you model the behavior that you want them to adopt. And I think our employees, our staff are no different. Act a certain way, carry yourself a certain way, interact with people in the street, in the elevator. I'm the way I am, like you were talking about authenticity. I'm the way I am. That's how I am. No, I'm not changing my, behavior for somebody else, but I am aware that as a leader, people are watching. And even when you think they're not watching, or, watching may not be the right word, they're listening, they're hearing, they're observing our behavior, and we set the tone and how we interact and how we treat people. I always treat people with respect. I always say please. I always say thank you. Always. It's just that's the way I was raised. It's not like I'm trying to do something. I'm just trying to be authentic, and I expect the same from my people.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. A thing I would add to that, because I think that is such an important message. And I think about that even in the context of what you said earlier, which was you had communication on your website, you had communication up on one of your walls. These aren't just
Yeah, we
words on a
communicate.
website.
Oh yeah.
These are values that we live. And the other piece that's I think really important to the role modeling, and this is something I talk about even in some of the trainings that I do, is role modeling plus challenging non-compliance to that. So if I'm doing that and I see that you are not over and over and over again, I'm not doing it just to show you, hey, look, I'm a good guy. I'm doing this because this is what my expectation is of you as well. And if you're not seeing that and adopting that as part of our culture and part of the way that we operate with each other, then calling that out is really important too, because it sends a message to everybody else, and not sends a message in this firm, heavy-handed way, but it sends the message that that's what we're about. And that's why I do what I do. And I want us all to be that way with each other. So I think such a great message. I want to give you a chance. You mentioned it earlier in the podcast. Can you tell people where they can find out more about your firm, your podcast?
Sure. I mean, the best way to find us is our website at bastamron.com, BASTAM like Mary, RON like Nancy.com. The podcast, there are links to the podcast there as well. Like I said, we're on Spotify, iTunes, etc. It's called The Practice, but I always tell people if you're looking for it to search Bast Amron. That's the best way, because there are other podcasts with the name The Practice. You're probably going to end up doing yoga if you just search The Practice. And then all of us are very active on LinkedIn. Jeffrey Bast. I like to write. I haven't been writing as much as I would like to lately, but I'm going to get back on that horse.
Awesome. And
So
I'll
this is
include,
really a lot of fun, Hakeem. Thanks so much.
yeah, my
Loved
pleasure.
it.
My pleasure.
Loved
And
it.
I'll include some of those links in the show notes too. So as people go to the episode, you can find the links that Jeff just mentioned in the show notes. Jeff, thanks so much for being here. I really
And
appreciate it,
and
buddy.
and definitely I highly encourage everyone to check out the episode of our podcast with Hakim on as a guest. It really was fantastic. I actually listened to it in the car with my father-in-law and my kids and my wife, and everyone loved it. Really,
And
really
nobody was
great.
sleeping?
Nobody was sleeping. Nobody was
Good.
sleeping.
No, it was a
Thanks,
blast
Hakeem.
being there with you guys. Thank you for being here. As always, I'd love to hear from you about the episode. What came up for you as you think about leveling up your leadership game? And please, if you enjoyed the episode, I encourage you to like and subscribe. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Hakim A. Lockdar or at lockdarcoaching.com. Thanks for tuning in. Keep being great. We'll see you next time.